Hello, I am Bret. This is my show, and I'm excited for us to talk about stuff today because it is KubeCon week. And with us this week, I have my friend that you saw 2 weeks ago, if you were here back then, Nirmal Mehta from Booz, Allen Hamilton.
Fancy seeing
Surprise!
you here at KubeCon. Fancy seeing you here.
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
you doing in the hallway?
I just, I was just hanging out. I'm having a coffee break in between sessions, but there's a keynote going around live right now, and I'm totally missing it. So maybe there's Jameson
So,
in this coffee cup.
so classic conference, right? Miss the
Late to the
keynote,
session. Yeah,
get some
missed the keynote.
coffee, see Bret in the hallway.
Well, it's day two, which means yesterday we were up late at all the vendor parties, and I rolled back into the hotel at 3 a.m. So then I decided to sleep in and watch the keynote virtually, which is going on right now. Everybody, like, this is it. You can watch it live. We're actually live while the keynote's happening. Didn't really plan for that or do that on purpose, but hey, they picked
Honestly,
our time slot.
yeah, there's never like a great time, right? Like
Right.
so much content, so many things going on. We got to
Well,
talk eventually.
I like that, unlike EU's in April or in August, that a lot of stuff going on that's time sensitive, like these live keynotes, are during my waking hours. Because EU, it was during my early morning, which I am not that person. Um, so hello
So,
everyone, welcome to the
so
chat.
if you were in person at KubeCon right now, you'd be in Starbucks in line waiting for your nitro cold brew.
Yes, yes. Watching the keynote on my phone, even though I paid all that money to be at the conference, I'm still watching it on my phone. And yeah, in line for the coffee was more higher priority than being at the front. I mean, that's kind of how the only reason that I ever actually made it through all the DockerCon keynotes at DockerCon was because they provided us those front rows. And so even if we showed up late, like, we could just stroll right on up there to the front.
The perks of being a Docker captain.
Yeah, yeah. That was a perk. That was a perk of the ambassadors program for the CNCF. But now, I mean, I don't know what they get in a virtual space. What the perk is there for a virtual con.
Like quality of service, like streaming.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they get a higher bit rate. So everyone out there, so we're talking about, I mean, KubeCon is the topic this week, especially on Twitter. If you're anything related to cloud native technologies, then people are kind of talking about this. They may not be attending, but they're certainly seeing a lot of the news coming out, because what happens is all the vendors that are related to the CNCF end up holding their announcements to this week and trying to one up each other on their new releases. I've seen a lot of vaporware announcements, coming soon announcements.
Ooh, vaporware.
Yeah.
Bret's list of vaporware 2020.
Things that aren't here yet, but they said they were doing, which, why does that matter in software? Like, I still don't get it. Anyway, so yeah, we're watching this is free, by the way. I have not paid for KubeCon, so this might be a KubeCon hallway track hanging out, but I am watching the free version of KubeCon. And if you somehow search the internet for KubeCon, then you somehow land on a page to sign up, then you'll eventually get to a registration that you go through that's 4 pages long. And then if you make sure you definitely check that box, it's don't make me pay for anything, you can watch the keynotes for free. After you get the email, then click the link in the email, then sign in with your Linux Foundation account, and then make your way through the portal to this page. You can watch the keynote.
So essentially, you need a CKA to like get to the keynote. It's like the first question on the certified Kubernetes administrator.
You think that if I went to like cncf.io, like, it would be
it probably
watch
is right
live
there.
right now on the front. Like, it would just be right here, like right there.
Anywho, we're not here to like bust CNCF's chops, KubeCon chops. We're here to talk about
great.
what's going on.
People are great.
Yes. Yeah.
They're working hard. By the way, this video was amazing. This promo video. That was a really, really funny little promo video.
Yes.
By the
I also like the just a quick shout out to both the Dan Cohn memorial video and
Yeah.
announcements, and a shout out to the diversity and inclusiveness initiatives. There's like a dang it, Bret, I should have linked it in our show notes.
What, for the diversity announcement?
Yeah, there's like what is that? It's like they're going through the whole entire software stack and making sure that the language is inclusive, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah, it's a whole committee, right? That they're gonna
yeah. So trying to. So the nice thing about KubeCon and DockerCon, for that matter, is it's where folks try to do better, like try to move the IT industry forward, right? And sometimes there's shots that are taken in terms of like attempts that don't play out as the best, or risks that folks take. But for the most part, it's a showcase of how we want to be, right? And I really appreciate that. That's like a good thing that comes out of KubeCon, and probably why it's very popular. And there have been many conferences in the past that were the center of IT, Velocity, OzCon, the Microsoft and VMware EMC conferences, Google I/O. I think KubeCon has kind of coalesced as the center of IT modernization in the last, I'd say 4 years or so. So
yeah,
always excited to see what comes out of there.
that is true. That it's a really nice conference that doesn't. It's a vendor-based conference, but it doesn't. What am I trying to say? So
it doesn't feel like it necessarily all the time with respect to the communities and the committees and the leadership of the Linux Foundation and the CNCF, right?
It's less exciting on the grand stage of it all, right? Because it's not a DockerCon keynote kind of feel, but that's not what it's for, right? The action is in the hallways. The action, the most important parts are happening, in the social spaces that we're in, and like any good conference that we go to nowadays, like your first couple of conferences in your life, it doesn't matter. Like everything is amazing. You love the sessions, you meet people, it's all great. But as you keep going to them, right? Once you're on your 15th conference, you now are less interested in most of the content. You're more interested about the people, and you learn the people that you respect, and you go to theirs because it's them, not because of the topic, and you listen to theirs, and you make sure that you have these little hangouts in the hallway where I should have had a new set for today where we were just like in a mock crowded hallway of previous KubeCon or DockerCon or something.
I kind of agree with that, Bret, but I also, one of the things I like to do at conferences, since I'm a veteran, a conference attender, and speaker for that matter.
By the way, as seen by his wall, if you can just look on the left side of the screen there, everyone, and see those badges. Look at that stack of badges. If there's ever anyone who's a professional conference, like who deserves to have an opinion about conferences, it's you. It's you.
Those are actually full. I've got to find some other places for the rest of them.
Right. What are you going to do now, huh? You run out of room.
What I like to do is I like to find conference talks that are outside of what I know. And for example, I was at South by Southwest a couple of years ago, and I went to a marketing to Gen Z track or whatever, the Zoomers, I guess.
Yep.
And that's not something I do. I'm not a marketing communications person, and I don't know how to market to the next generation. But I find that a diversity of content, a diversity of information and knowledge helps always. And conferences should be an opportunity for everyone to broaden their horizons. So, like for example, there's like build packs just got promoted into the CNCF. Don't know much about them. Different kind of world where those came from. Probably check out those tracks and those talks to learn more about that. Or if it's like something around or GitOps, which is a hot topic, or I don't know, regulatory security for Kubernetes in the financial sector or something. I don't know. It's all those kinds of topics that are outside of the thing. I don't go to a conference to look at talks of things I already know. I try to find as much of a diverse kind of talks that are outside of what I typically know. That's just Nirmal's way of doing things at a conference, but and just hanging out with Bret. That's my main goal.
Always. And we hung out together at real conferences, so why not hang out together at the virtual conferences?
There we go.
I'm still waiting for the platform that's going to make all this better. Yes.
It's tough. Virtual conference is it's a tough thing to do.
Sadly, the KubeCon, Cloud Native Con conference system is, I'm just going to say it's abysmal. But I'm hoping that 2021 yields better results. I feel like we have all the smart people that run the internet at this conference. Like, surely we can come up with something better than buffering disconnected video with tiny little windows and all sorts of quirky little 1990s concepts around vendor booths. And it's just, the whole thing feels funny to me. But 8 months ago, rather, I posted on Twitter the same idea that I'm still committed to. Like, if there's anyone out there who's got startup money, I've got it. And there's probably 3 or 4 different startups right now, all working on the virtual conference Uber platform for the 2020s that is X-Gen, Y-Gen, Z-Gen compatible and all that. But it needs to be Twitch style, not necessarily for the each talk, because that's putting a lot on the ownership of the each talk person to actually do that. So what you do is you have the commentators all day long that are sending you off and basically it's like you're watching the ESPN show during the Super Bowl or whatever, right? You're watching it, they're talking about what's happening right now. They're sending notifications to your browser of what's happening so you can jump into the sessions from them, and then you go back. Versus, you and I, we were on the live show for DockerCon, and we kind of tried to do that, but we didn't really talk about what was going on right now in the breakout sessions. We were just hanging out with people chit-chatting, but it's almost like if you could have that kind of show, and then when they're done with their session, maybe they show up for a quick 5-minute, 10-minute hangout on your show, and then they leave or whatever. But the other thing is this, right? You and I, we're friends. We meet in the hallway. We hang out in the hallway track. No one's done that well. No one has figured out how to do that. And I'm convinced that the best software we've come up with that we need to just integrate in these platforms is House Party. So if anybody's looked at House Party...
I thought you were going to say Discord, but sure.
No, House Party, man. So if anyone has not seen this app, so House Party is this, it's a Mac app, it's a web app. I'm actually not even sure if you can use the web app, but it's a mobile app primarily. You can use it in Chrome now. And it basically is, to me, just like the hallway at a conference. The experience of it, the way it presents video, because we've all got Zoom and FaceTime and Google Hangouts and all that stuff. But the difference is that this only shows my friends, people that I know. So it's consuming my contacts or my friends list in social. And then I can see what they're doing in Hangout or House Party right now, right? That's just like walking down the hallway at a conference. If I see Nirmal and he's over there talking to someone, I'm like, oh, cool. I want to go talk to Nirmal. Oh, wait, he's talking to a stranger that I don't know. Well, I don't want to interrupt that conversation, so I won't, right? I'll just keep on walking. But if you're hanging out, talking to some other friends I know, then I'm going to hop over to that conversation and be a part of it, right? That's exactly what House Party's like. You see your friends talking to other friends or your sister talking to your mother, and you can hop right into that video call. And while you're doing it, you can play games. It has a bunch of games that are built in. They just added it to Fortnite. So now you can play Fortnite while house partying with your friends. It's really cool. If you haven't tried it, check it out. It's actually by the former Meerkat developers, if you remember that solution back before Periscope was bought by Twitter rather. Meerkat was like an online live streaming solution. Anyway, so I love it. I use it with my family. I use it with friends a couple times. We've used it together.
So KubeCon is using this thing called Rambly. Have you pull up the link I just sent you?
Rambly. No, it's the wrong browser.
This is turning into a virtual conference talk instead of like what's going on at KubeCon. Sorry, folks. We'll get to what's going on at KubeCon.
I didn't know about this. You only get this if you pay?
Let me see if I can.
Like, how would I have found out about this?
People are liking it
because it's not in the email that I got. This is one of the challenges I'm having with KubeCon is there's a lot of this cool stuff that's happening, but it's like, how do you have to know somebody, right?
It's very hard to find stuff for sure.
Speaking of that, I'm on a live show tomorrow with CodeFresh, which they're actually doing their own little hallway track with guests. I'll put that in chat. So check out that tomorrow after the KubeCon day. Tomorrow, that's going to be at the end of the day. So it's basically post KubeCon. So again, that's another one of those things you have to know. You have to go searching the internet, scouring the internet for this. How would you know that that's there, that's happening, and that they're talking about the KubeCon events of the day? But Rambly, can I just? Is there a Rambly KubeCon thing that I can just jump into?
I have to find the link. I'm trying to frantically find it, but
that's okay. No pressure. So this is the thing. This is the Slack that we're all in, right? We're all in Slack, in the CNCF Slack. So when you go to the conference, they tell you about the community Slack. You jump in there, and you pick one of the 80 channels for the conference, and you can chat with people during the conference. But that's the only thing I've seen in the official communique or on the website. So is there anyone else using this in chat? We have people in chat that are using this Rambly thing. I'm super stoked that it's retro style 90s video game.
I got it. It's Gentle Bird 1.
Oh, they got their own URL.
Yeah, hold on. Doing it live.
Why not? Oops.
Is this the right one?
Jumping in.
Right one? Maybe it's not. I think.
Wear headphones to improve the experience for everyone.
So KubeCon hallway Rambly. Oh, there it is. There it is. This makes more sense. I think that's the one. Maybe. Yeah, this is. There's some people in here. I don't know.
Is it chat?
All right. Well,
it's
you
okay
can
for me to go.
You walk up and then you can do push to talk to that person. So you walk around.
I'm a duck. I don't. Oh, so it's voice chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that live.
No.
That would accidentally be putting someone on the internet, and I don't want to do that.
Caller 5. You're on the air.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we already have our own Discord, so in case you go to DevOps.fan up at the top, and if it didn't create chaos, I would totally do that live right now. We have to figure out one day how to do that, how to have callers jump in on the Vital DevOps chat, and then we bring that audio in so we can have callers come in, right? Because I'd love to do a caller show. Right now, it's technically challenging because we have to set it up ahead of time, give them a special URL, and all that. So we'll work on that. That's a goal for 2021, people, to have you on the show. There's a couple other ones that I watch where they actually have people send, instead of calling in and leaving a voicemail, they record just using the audio app on their phone and then send it to either a text address or an email address, and then they just play it on the show. So it's high fidelity because they weren't recording it on an analog phone system. Do you have any questions?
All right, we're losing viewers here just rambling about this stuff. Let's get into some content from KubeCon. How about that, Bret?
How would you rate ELK as a monitoring application running in Kubernetes cluster 1 to 10?
Wait, where are you reading this?
These are questions in chat. I would give it a 6. You got to run it yourself. It requires maintaining it.
Stateful.
It's
okay.
Like I'd rather just outsource it to something like log entries or Datadog or Paper Trail or I'd rather just do that. So I'm giving it a lower score.
So as monitoring, first of all, running an elk stack is tough to do. It requires a lot of maintenance in O&M. And then on top of that, if you want to run it on Kubernetes, which I know is not your question, that's even a tougher thing to do. So I would agree with Bret. I would actually put it as a 5 unless you're getting like the supported version from Elastic.
Yeah.
But even then, I would...
Or logz, like logz.io, which actually runs that stack as an outsourced,
Exactly. I was going to say, like, find it as a SaaS service. Trust me. Running elk means you'll do like a 2 a.m. like storage sharding scaling event, and you're going to lose all your logs and all your information.
Yeah, you basically got to be a full-time sysadmin for that system, right? Like you've got to.
Yeah. It's unlike other open source software where a lot of open source software is kind of more O&M friendly, I would say. Elk is not great in that with respect to that. Yeah. It's a full FTE worth of time.
Yeah, and then you have to end up monitoring the monitoring solutions. Like you got a logging solution that can't go down because it's the only way you're going to be able to find your logs. So then you got to monitor it, and it just becomes, I don't know. I'm just not anymore. I'm just not, unless you've got certain situations like appliances or IoT, or you got special edge cases, I would call them. You're probably in the cloud. You're probably in a data center. If you're in a data center, the data center's already got a logging solution, so just use that. If you're in the cloud, use the cloud logging solutions. Like I'm just not a huge. We're all so busy. We all have such limited time, and Kubernetes is hard enough. So the last thing I want to do is really run my own monitoring and my own. I mean, they're really cool tools, but I don't work with any teams that have any bandwidth to handle that additional level of complexity.
That's the trick. They're easy. It's very easy to get a Docker Compose file or Kubernetes deployment for Elk Stack, for these other, like the Tick Stack. And it's easy to run like on your system at home or on your laptop as containers. And you're like, oh, this is great. It's like when you actually need to monitor like hundreds of instances and nodes, and that data is super critical. And, there's like security requirements to maintain that and retain that data for X amount of time. And like, it's the only way you can debug your apps. Like that's a different story completely.
For sure. Rapid fire. Your most favorite Kubernetes distribution, both for production and or side projects, fun stuff? Anyone that I don't have to manage.
There's a new one. I haven't tried it out. It's KOS or K0S?
K0s maybe.
K0s.
I'll show that. So yeah, it was on the list for today. So Mirantis put out what I'll just call a K3S competitor, or K3's competitor, or Keys competitor, depending on the 3 different ways you can say that, called KOs or K0s or KOs. Maybe it's KOs. My understanding is it is not as, anyone can make a Kubernetes distribution. It is, I am not going to bother with it. So we've already got enough of these.
Yeah, like vanilla Kube, if anything,
I'm not sure why. Maybe Mirantis has a future plan for it, and they needed their own minimal distribution that they could control.
Yeah.
But my initial testing I've seen other people do is that K3s still has smaller. It's a smaller number of files, smaller memory usage, has more external support in terms of third-party stuff or something. So, but this is an early project. They just announced it. I just don't understand why. Like, I think someone was claiming that they just took K3s and changed it or something, but I don't know if that's really true or not.
Yeah. I think mine that I like to play around with is Kind.
Yeah, they're a competitor to Rancher, so I can see why they wouldn't want to use a Rancher product. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you out there that are probably going to ask me that, I would say just use the one that we've had for years now and that people have tested and is running in production. And
yes,
and that you can actually buy support from Rancher, because they were on the Darren Shepard, the co-founder of Rancher, was on the show like 3 weeks ago, and he was like, yeah, you can buy support for it. It's totally an enterprise product. And it now does multi-node and all that stuff. So actually, you know what? That was 2 months ago. And I'm thinking of Canonical, which does microkates, which also provides canonical enterprise multi-node support for their distro, tiny little distro microkates. So there's already been 2 other good solutions out there that I've used. This is a third one that I don't think is any different.
I would say my favorite is to run Kubernetes through Docker for a Docker desktop, Mac or Windows.
Okay,
vanilla,
like built-in,
like
the built-in. I thought you were going to say Kind, but not Kind.
And then the other one is Kind, just running Kubernetes. I'm getting really interested in, so there's this gap between Kubernetes on the desktop for developers versus, whatever Kubernetes distribution you're running in production. And I think these smaller versions of Kubernetes and the ones that run inside containers will be a stepping stone to bridging that gap between these two environments. And so I'm really interested in very quick Kubernetes distributions that run in containers so that you could test, like it becomes part of your CI/CD flow. And I think that pattern is going to become much more like the normal pattern in the future, where, when you do a new build or Docker file creation or Docker build or whatever, you're going to like spin up a Kind, deploy it locally, do your testing, right?
Yep.
And then shoot those YAML files over, or the Docker files over, or the Docker builds.
Kind is not something that I've been able to implement in a project yet, but I'm on a project now that I'm excited about that we may be able to use it, because I do want them, given that they're going to be deploying on production on Kubernetes.
What's the K3D, right? K3S in Docker. That's the other one.
Oh yeah, I mean,
there's like a bunch. Kind's one of them.
I feel like Kind is, I don't know. I'm assuming that's the leader, like the most popular. It seems like it's what everybody knows about and uses. So
Rancher has K3D, so maybe not the leader. I don't know. That pattern, though, is what I'm interested in.
I know that Kind's what Kubernetes teams use to test Kubernetes, though, right? That's what I've heard. So
yeah, I think so. Yeah, Kind is the one that's in the. It's part of the whatever you call it. The like
CNCF.
The Kubernetes like project, right?
Ecosystem of tooling for the project. I see. Yeah, because as far as I know, they were scratching their own itch. Like they needed to be able to create inception of Kubernetes, and
I think
there's go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to change subjects. So if you're going to keep talking,
I was going to change subjects too. Go for it though.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff in our list, so let's just rapid fire some of that stuff, and I'll put links in.
Perfect.
I'll put links in for people. So the first thing up was that Apple was a part of the show yesterday. So you might now, granted, all of these breakout sessions and stuff are supposed to be live on YouTube within a month. So check out the fact that evidently Kubernetes is now a major part of Apple. So that was I saw people talking about that in multiple places. So I have not watched it myself. Thought this was kind of fun. Someone was doodling from the keynote yesterday. That was a pretty cool little visualization. I want to be this person that doodles. He's even got the little mask, the little COVID mask on his doodle. I want to be the doodler, but I'm just not good at it. Like I try and I just suck. I need to practice more. And then one of this guy Justin, actually for his talk yesterday, he's in video production, so he did all of his stuff was hand drawn. So he was showing off his slides, and he evidently had 1,000 slides or something because he did some stuff. He did some video motion stuff. But it's just a sort of a quick thing to scroll through and see all of the amazing. Yeah, he's showing his process. It was really cool. I thought that was neat that he was showing off behind the scenes. Yeah. And then the thing we can talk about for a little bit, the CNCF survey. So I'll save everybody the login link that requires you to give your info
I think
away.
the big things there are CI/CD for Kubernetes and all that kind of stuff is the hotness right now. Everyone's trying to figure out different patterns there, GitOps, different ways of testing deployments, testing, doing like manifest, what do you call it? Like strengthening the software supply chain of your infrastructure as code as it relates to Kubernetes. Maybe that's the way to say it.
Yeah.
And then I think the other one is the 30% on serverless. That doesn't surprise me. And then the other one is a 50% increase year over year with respect to service mesh. That should probably not surprise anyone.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that is going to, the service mesh stuff is going to gel in the next, let's say, 8 to 12 months. And then there's going to be more of those features that are either integrated in Kubernetes or like, the kind of like the batteries included kind of versions of these things. Stateful applications is still a mess in the Kubernetes world.
I'm actually surprised that number is that high.
I am shocked that number is that high.
Yeah, but the problem I have with that is, what do you classify as a stateful? Anytime you need a volume, or is it like a database? Like I consider a database a much harder problem to run in Kubernetes because I'm usually running it redundant, right? So it's got a mirror or replica or something versus like I'm on a project where the container runs and there needs to be a license key entered, so it needs a volume to store the license key. Like that's technically a stateful app, but but a mirrored database server is way more complicated. So
is there details in this report later on?
There are. You can actually scroll down and see a lot of the stuff. In the captain's channel, everybody was picking apart the confusing questions and the vague answers, and so yeah, you can maybe dive down and find some stuff.
The stateful stuff really worries me. To me, that means 50% of the people are going to lose their data in production. I doubt this.
My very first Docker Swarm production cluster on the Docker Enterprise solution back in like 2017. We it might have been I'm not sure if it was 2016, 2017. We talked about this before. Like I lost a database right before we went live. I accidentally deleted the database volume because I did not have years of experience and didn't understand when volumes go away and when volumes don't. And I found sort of my own little edge case where it did go away. And I'm so glad we were like a day before going live. And yeah.
So here's the other thing. It says here that the top 3 native storage projects in production are Google Persistent Disk, EBS, and Azure Disks, so, I mean, sure.
Yeah. So this is also the thing, right? Is for students in my courses, one of the most popular storage questions is, what should I be using as my storage driver? Or first off, they first realized that like with Docker built in, that there is such a thing as a local driver. That's the default, and that they're actually without understanding it, they're deciding on a storage driver, and then it only puts it on the machine that they start the container on, and that could lead to problems if you're trying to do multi-server. And so they have to understand all that knowledge. But then they go down this rabbit hole of all the options that they might choose for how to store data. And it leads to probably what I should just call we should just have a persistent show, where there's an order of the questions you should ask yourself about your storage. And the very last question of all of them, that whole workflow, the very last question is, which storage solution should I use in Kubernetes? Or which storage driver should I use? Which CSI plugin should I add? Because you have to understand the app, your ecosystem, like what's your data center got, which cloud. I mean, if you're on your cloud, you're going to use that cloud storage, right? There's so many of these things where the decision factors are all made for you way before you get to the whole, hey, should I use Portworx or Ceph or, Gluster? Or like, I get all these questions for that stuff, and the reality is that's the last question you should ask yourself. Because the reality is you probably already have an answer, and that's, oh, are you on Google? Well, then you're using Google Persistent Disk.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a really good question from Owen. He says, does the file system matter? And I said, yes. I'm just going to repeat what's in the chat that everyone can read right now, but yes, very much so. So not only for just like Docker locally or Docker Swarm, but Kubernetes, the file system matters. The storage solution that, whether it's a cloud, if you're using like EFS or EBS or some other technology solution, all of them have real trade-offs, meaning like it's not like a willy-nilly kind of quick decision you can make. And they are all very sensitive to what you're trying to do on Kubernetes. Yeah. So that's the unfortunate part of on these abstraction layers, right? So you have like Kubernetes, you have the container runtime, you have the VM itself, and then you have the cloud, vendor solutions or other vendor solutions, presenting the actual storage, and then you have like the file systems on that storage and the hardware that backs that storage. All of those layers in a stateless application don't matter, and Kubernetes and all that other stuff does a pretty clean abstraction. When you start doing stateful, the abstractions start to break down, and decisions that you make along each of those layers has a true impact to, or is impacted by the workload that you're trying to support with that physical volume. As much as we want to think it doesn't, it will, and it still does. Back to you, Bret.
No, I'm just listening, going, yeah, this is a show. I mean, Owen's question implies, like, I'm just gonna bring that one back up on the screen. Does the file system matter? So I think the short answer for me is containers do not change all of the work and requirements of a traditional storage solution for any application. You're not Kubernetes does not allow you to stop caring about all the nuances of storage, like the storage layer. Is it volume? Is it, like you're saying, what is it? ext4, am I using the cloud storage? Is it SSD? Is it off disk using NFS over the network? Is it iSCSI? Is it fiber channel in a data center? Like all of those decisions you have to know all of that and understand all of that. You have to know your application's requirements, what kind of storage, have you tested on that storage with your application? And that's all pre-container stuff that all still matters the same way in containers. Like containers don't change any of that in my mind. The thing that container orchestrators can do is they simply automate some of the management tasks, like provisioning the storage or expanding the storage if it gets too full, or maybe backing up what's on the storage a little bit, depending on the Kubernetes plugins you have. So I think for a lot of people, they really are hoping that containers somehow absolve them of the responsibility of dealing with disk space. And I would say, sadly, no, especially if you're managing your own servers, right? Now, if you're using a cloud-hosted solution, what were you doing before containers? That's probably exactly what you're going to keep doing in containers. Were you using
Right.
SSD on server? Were you using the NFS solution with AWS called EFS? That's way too many acronyms. But the EFS solution, which is an NFS network-based file server.
Yeah.
Are you on Azure using Windows with SMB file shares? Like those are all things that you're going to keep doing in containers. Containers don't change that. If you were
Yep.
doing your own manual replication, like using something like Ceph, where you were replicating from disks on a server to other server disks, you're still probably going to be doing that. It's just maybe that Kubernetes and these tools will automate some of the management, but you still have to understand the technologies and the decisions you have to make about the formats and the size and all that stuff is still there, still matters. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer the question. Basically, yes,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so I think it comes down to the fact that your application storage requirements are less deterministic than a stateless application requirements. That's what it just comes down to,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're, for example, running an Elk stack, right? Elk is got a protocol and it's writing, it has a storage mechanism um, that writes data in a specific way, assumes things are laid out in a specific way. It might have more writes than reads, might have more reads than writes. It might have sensitivity to latencies. Video streaming is a completely different use case from like an Elk stack.
Yeah.
What Kubernetes tries to do, and I don't know why my video is like blurring out here, but
Your CPU is working hard.
yeah, apparently everyone in my household is streaming from KubeCon right now. So, what Kubernetes tries to do is like abstract that in some kind of way from the storage, but I don't know. I don't think it's like there's like a clean way to do that. And I think,
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot more work around that in the future. All 8 bits of me is saying this right now.
All 8 bits. Yeah. All 8 pixels. I mean,
Yes. There we go.
if you're not using if you're not running databases and you're mostly doing web apps and worker apps and and stuff like that, and you're outsourcing the persistent data stuff like Redis and Postgres and MySQL and MongoDB, if you're outsourcing all of that to the provider of that, like to the hosted solution, then you can probably get away with just shrugging and not caring about your storage. You can say, provision me a VM, provision me a Kubernetes cluster automatically in my cloud of choice, and then my apps will probably run fast enough. And if I need better I/O, I might be able to just either buy better servers, make sure they got SSD, always SSD if you can, and then maybe I can get more servers and share the load to offset that high I/O. But I mean, the minute you start adding databases in there, you have to care about all the things now. You have to care about database backups, database monitoring, disk write versus disk read.
Yeah.
You mentioned Overlay 2, which is a storage driver for the layered file system in a Docker container, which we don't even get into like on the first day of learning Docker, because that's somewhat advanced concepts. But you have to understand that if you're writing into a container that's not into the volume of a container, that's going to be different performance versus the volume, which is native performance. But all of that doesn't matter if you're focusing on persistent. If you're running small apps, right, or like normal human apps, not at scale, as they say, or if you're not running databases. The minute you want to start running a database, suddenly you have to care about all the I/O, all the performance, the read over the write. Are the logs on a different disk with a different format, because the constant writing of that is more important for that type of file system. SSD solved some of these problems, and a lot of us could just shrug our shoulders and say we don't care, which I love it. I love that SSD is now like the default in most places, so that a lot of us that are running small time systems for only thousands of people and not millions of people, we can just kind of use the defaults and they work. I love that. That to me has made more difference in any technology than containers or Kubernetes or any of that stuff. Like SSD, all the things, in my opinion.
So I think this needs to be a topic for another show in the future, for sure.
For sure.
Komar Raju, I hope I'm saying your name right. definitely understand that Rook is the CNCF like vision for the future. However, at the same time, I think these solutions are going to be driven by the cloud providers as they're the main places that these workloads are running currently, right? And
Yeah.
that pattern bores out from the CNCF survey as well. So we'll see. I think this is a great topic for a future show, Bret.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And they're talking about Rook, the CNCF project that doesn't actually provide you storage. It manages the storage decisions you make.
yep. All the things
However,
that we were talking about.
yeah, exactly.
Attempting
However,
to.
most of the people that I know using Rook are using it to basically manage Ceph. It's the most common use case that they talk about. And again, this requires expertise in all those tools. Like you
Mhm.
would not want to ever go in production with Ceph unless you were well aware of how Ceph worked and that you had thorough knowledge in it, or any of these other database technologies or file system technologies that layer on top of the things like ext4 or whatever.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to handle. So I always, with teams, I'm always looking to push that workload off onto the cloud provider, or and usually if you're in a data center, the data center has a data team like that. They run the iSCSI and fiber channel systems and all of the dedicated storage, and so they're the ones that should be really dictating what's being connected to Kubernetes. And then your app providers, your app makers are saying, we think we need this, and you work together as a team. And
Yeah.
so to me, again, the last thing you ever do is decide what Kubernetes tool you're going to use. But yeah, Rook is a very popular one, and I'm glad.
So in conclusion, send a link to Rook. Send a link of Rook to your data services team and say you figure it out over there.
Yeah, look at the options that Rook provides, and because I personally will never want to run Ceph. I will talk every company that I can work with out of doing Ceph, because the teams that I've met, they've got like 2 people, and that's a significant portion of their job is managing the Ceph clusters. Like,
Yeah.
and all it does is replicate files between servers, right? It's not that, in theory, it's not that big of a deal, but data is important. You lose data, you lose your job.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like a lot of these stateless patterns, the container isn't important. You can lose the container, another one will come up. Data doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And so it's tightly coupled. We're like the community is trying to decouple a very tightly coupled thing. All right. So that's a lot on storage. Didn't think we were going to be talking about that today.
So I'm gonna totally shift it. Unless you want to take yours. I think you had some stuff to talk about.
Yeah. I wanted to encourage. So I have 2 colleagues, or 3 colleagues actually, that are speaking at KubeCon. Let me make sure I say these things right. So if you are attending KubeCon today from 4:50 to 5:25 Eastern, there's a talk called DevOps All the Things, Creating a Pipeline to Validate Your OPA. That's Open Policy Agent Policies. That's an awesome talk by 2 of my colleagues, Goran Osim and Karpagam from Booz. And it's about OPA gatekeeper and OPA policy. Another great topic, by the way, for a future show, Bret, which is the Open Policy Agent. Really cool stuff going on there, and something that has been coming up a lot in my job, trying to make secure and compliant systems. And then another talk tomorrow at 4 p.m. Everything you should be doing but aren't, DevSecOps for Kubernetes workflows. And that's by 2 of my favorite people, Stephen Tarana, who's a chief engineer at Booz, who works on the open source Jenkins templating engine, which is, I'll send out a link on the chat, but check that out. And Pop Andrea, Dan Pop from Sysdig. I'm sure you've heard his podcast and YouTube videos, but they're both talking about how to use open source technologies such as Helm, Falco, Argo to do DevSecOps, right? Like the compliance and secure the software lifecycle, or the software supply chain, if you will. So awesome talks around governance as code, and check them out. So I'll paste some links in the chat, but definitely doing a shout out there. So that's
Yeah.
two things I would love to talk about, and also good topics for future shows, Brett. I don't know how many of your viewers deal with regulated environments. Everyone should have to deal with secure environments and securing your Kubernetes and Docker environments. So another thing around that is that yesterday CNCF released a cloud native security white paper. A couple months ago, CIS, which is that opens, that not open, but that Association for Secure or whatever. I don't know what it stands for, but it's the organization that makes like secure baselines for operating systems.
Oh,
and
CIS, the Center, whatever it's called.
security, probably something like that. I apologize to
Yeah, the
anyone who's
benchmark, right?
at EKS benchmark. They came out with they benchmark. NCF came out with a cloud native white paper, a security white paper. There's a lot more resources around creating secure Kubernetes. I think this is a testament to. I think we're starting to see Kubernetes mature, and I think that is why we're starting to see a lot of the security stuff come out, because it's stable enough, right? The API is creeping towards stability, and I think a lot of the security stuff is going to be coming out more and more around more stable APIs. But anyways, if you're in a regulated industry and you're listening to this video, there's a lot more content coming out around how to secure Kubernetes environments. So check all that stuff out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. I got your link. Thank you. Thanks for putting this in the YouTube.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I was looking for it. It's not CIS. Well, the one the one you were looking. That's the
I was
security
talking about
SIG.
it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
Um,
Confused. Yeah, because I couldn't find anything on the CIS website.
I was talking about a lot of things there. So
Yeah. No worries. Along those lines, though, a couple of announcements out of Azure I caught right before the show went live was that they're now using the CIS benchmarks as for their Kubernetes clusters. So there's some sort of at least standard agreement on how they're running. And then the other noticeable thing, because being a Docker guy, is that Azure for 119 will now start using Containerd by default instead of Dockerd. And that's all expected. I'm actually surprised that this wasn't earlier. They probably were waiting for certain compatibilities, because for the longest time there's been little edge cases that Docker was still necessary underneath your Kubernetes cluster instead of just using Containerd directly. But this essentially will have things starting slightly faster, like we're talking milliseconds faster, and it will also use less memory by default on all your nodes, because the Containerd shim in the Containerd binary is less than the Docker plus Docker shim plus Containerd combo that was all there before. So they actually talk a little bit about that here on their website in the docs. I'll put that in there. This is just a normal trend, and most of us won't even have to care, because we're just gonna run how the cloud Kubernetes how it runs, right?
Yep.
And we rarely need to worry about the low-level tooling. But this is related to the KubeCon talk that unfortunately I was not able to give this year, just due to timing and lack of schedule. They approved a talk for Jerome Petazzoni and I to do a workshop on moving from Dockerd to Containerd for your Kubernetes clusters, and what that really meant, the different tooling, what changes. And we wanted to do that. We just ended up not getting enough time to be able to make it. So we sadly had to decline. Hopefully we can do that next year for KubeCon. I still think we would get a lot of interest from people that are slowly going to move. That's the trend, right? Every year we see more and more of the survey. I think the last survey I saw was maybe 2019, or that was showing like 15 to 20% was now using Containerd over Docker of all Kubernetes clusters. Anyway, just a trend we should all pay attention to.
Absolutely.
The KubeCon keynote must be over, because I'm seeing everybody doing hand claps in the Slack, in the cloud native Slack. They're down there.
And then one last thing is CNCF has created a certified Kubernetes security specialist certification. So if you're interested in security,
Yeah.
which, like I mentioned, everyone should be, don't just assume that the vanilla installation of Kubernetes or what you get from a cloud provider is secure by default. There are things that you have to do, best practices that one should partake in to make sure that your environment is running well and not easily mess upable, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So this particular person has created a little online resource for that specialty, and I'll put that in the chat. In case
I
you're,
already did.
Oh, you're too fast. You're too fast, Matt.
Yeah.
You're too good. All right. So yeah, and that's great. I'm gonna start that puppy. Oh, of course I'm not logged in. Maybe I won't start today.
Tell us your password. Tell us your password.
Yeah. I use 1Password.
All right. Hey, Niels.
1Password for
Niels
all my 1Passwords, and I use
Hey,
LastPass,
Niels.
but I like 1Password too.
All right,
Highly
Bret.
recommend
We
it.
covered a lot of we covered a lot of ground here. I know we're at the top of the hour here, so
Yeah.
do we want to do like a lightning round, like one last question? Let's do one last question. Anyone
Yeah.
have
Who
another
has
question?
who has questions for us in the audience? I'm looking through the chat, make sure we got everything.
I like that. I'm still fooling clients with Alpine images that show no scan results.
Actually, that's insider info right there. That's insider info. So
That's
maybe
hilarious.
using a scanner that doesn't work with Alpine so that it just says, there's nothing.
No cat ones.
Yeah, yeah. When everything's statically compiled into one binary, it turns out it's actually quite hard for a scanner to read that code. So it doesn't actually, I mean, none of these scanners that I'm aware of read the binary code anyway. They just look up files and version databases.
Yep. All right.
So that's a
Doesn't
different
look like
topic as
anyone's got a
well.
question. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we came out with 3 topics, right? Storage, security,
Security.
and we should do a KubeCon recap. Oh, wait, that's this one.
Right. We should do that. Yeah. After KubeCon's over, we should do a recap. Oh, wait, we just did.
You know what
so
we should
again,
do is we should play this video and then comment on ourselves.
so meta. Wait, we should play this video while we were watching the keynote in this video, and then comment on ourselves. Comment, on the keynote.
Yeah.
We should do that.
Some people are asking who's going to be your next show guest. Guest next show.
Well, that's a great question. Let me look it up. I'm not sure who our next one's going to be. Let me pull that up. I should be more organized and have this information.
Well,
next week is a holiday. Next week is Thanksgiving in the United States, so I will not be live streaming next week.
Just food coma live stream.
What's that?
Food coma live stream.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be full belly on the couch, like passing out from the what is it? The tryptophan or what is it?
Tryptophan.
Tryptophan, whatever it is. It's in turkey. Well, it actually is in all meats, but yeah, makes me sleepy. So we're gonna be doing that. That's a tradition in the United States where we eat a lot of food. We hang out with family, and so we're now working on our protocols for how to see our family. We're all going to try to get tested and actually be in the same household for like the first time in 9 months with a mother-in-law and that sort of thing. So we're working on that now. But yeah, so no show next week, everyone. Take the week off. Take this time to go watch a KubeCon video if you have access, or watch one of the keynotes if you didn't get to watch it, or read something. There's just tons of stuff coming out, so it's a lot for any one person to handle. And then hopefully sometime in December, KubeCon will have the videos up. I will be live, by the way. I think I said this at the beginning of the show. I'll be live tomorrow on YouTube on the CodeFresh channel. So look up CodeFresh Hallway Track. That will be the show tomorrow. They're doing a show live today, so you should probably check out their channel today after KubeCon is over. And I'll just send you that link in the chat. and then they're having commentary at the end of each day, and special guests, and I will be on their show tomorrow. So I guess I'll see you there. And thank you, sir, for being on this show again for the 100th time or whatever it is.
Oh, I wish.
Always welcome.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Always welcome.
Thank you so much, Bret, for having me on. And I hope
Yeah.
everyone enjoyed us wasting a perfectly good hour with
Yes.
us today.
Hopefully you didn't do anything more important to do, because that was probably more important. Anyway,
always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, well, it's always a pleasure having you. And for those of you, thank you so much for being in chat. My patrons, thank you so much for being supporters of this channel. You are the ones that make this keep chugging along, and all the other things that we do in open source and open content are because of your patronage. So we will be back here in 2 weeks after the holiday break, and on Thursdays, 1 o'clock, UTC -5 here on YouTube Live. Ciao.
Bye-bye.